Hey guys, this is Jason here,
I'm Zach.
and this is BX Live at Lunch, episode 2 for 2020. Episode 2. Today, we're going to talk about exercise prescription and why it matters. So, exercise prescription is how we select the exercises that you guys are going to use for your programming, or if you're writing a program, how you might select the exercises that you may need to use. So, we're going to start out with how we get to what exercises we're going to select.
Right, so we start with an assessment. In the assessment, we kind of see how you're starting to move, how your body moves, as well as your goals. So you might have a weight loss goal, you might want to build strength, you might have some correctional exercises that need to be done to improve muscle imbalances and bring those a little bit more balanced. So it starts with the assessment and seeing what your goals are, and then making a plan to get you towards your goals.
And if you have questions or comments, feel free to ask those right below here. And if you want, you can hit us up on Instagram. You have our Instagram handles right below us. And we are taking the questions live, so when you ask, we will answer as they come. Sorry if we don't get to your question, but we'd like for this to be as interactive as possible. So, as we said, the way we select exercises is we have to find out what your background and what your history is. So we start that process with an assessment. I'm always leery if someone says they started the workout program without an actual assessment, because it's hard for us, even as professionals, to really tell you exactly what needs to happen if we don't know your background or what it looks like, or what your history is like, what your exercise history is like. Zach, are there things in specific that you like to know prior to you figuring out what to do and what to prescribe for people?
And just to expand on that a little bit, it's good to have an end point, like I want to lose weight, I want to build strength, but if we don't have that starting point, it's kind of hard to map out a route directly to your end point. So the things I want to start out with are just seeing how people move and seeing where they're at in terms of their foundational pieces of their body, like their core, see how their strength is in their core, and if they can even activate their core, because as weird as it sounds, a lot of people don't know really how to activate and use their core the proper way. So
to show enough support.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm a big fan of that. Finding out the movement quality itself. So making sure that they can move, they can squat well, they can lunge well, or if they can't do those particular movements at all. Yep. And it also, a lot of times it'll depend on their history with exercise as a whole. A lot of people will come with some idea of what they used to do. Then you have to, it's not so much that you already were able to exercise, but we also have to find out where our communication will bridge. So there'll be things about what you did in the past that might be different just based on new research, finding out about whatever the history of that particular exercise was, or the way you were eating, or
exactly. And I think that goes the other way too. If say you're a runner, you might have more cues that we can give you to really help you further along the process than somebody that's just starting out. So really understanding your background helps us better communicate with our clients.
Exactly.
And I think
so then runners, weightlifters, weight loss, all issues in which we are going to tackle today. But a couple of things that we're also going to determine, and that you'll see in an assessment that we do, we're going to gauge your patterns of movement. So Zach, tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you might look for in patterns of movement. You've already said core, making sure they can engage their core.
Another one I look for is the squat. It's one of the better leg exercises out there. Good compound movement, so seeing that they can squat properly, not come up on their toes, which is a sign of quad dominance, and stay in proper form while they squat.
Yep. In that squat, we're also looking at their lower back position to kind of see how their hips move once they cross that threshold of parallel, where the hip crease meets the knee. Yep. And then there's a lot that can be told from the squat. You can also find out, because you said coming up on their toes being a quad dominant issue, also the mobility and flexibility of the ankle can be determined based on where their heels come up in that squat also.
Yep.
A couple other patterns that we're looking for. So a lot of times people complain about lunges. That tends to be something people complain about. But our bodies are naturally designed to lunge, so that should be a natural movement, and the ability to put your knees at 90 degrees shouldn't cause trouble. So figuring out where in the lunge there's trouble, if there's lunging trouble. Now, I'm not saying that a lunge has to be a necessity in your workout programming, but learning whether or not an individual can lunge is one of the important things that we need to do, just because it's a popular movement and it's something that can be used to help benefit people in the long run.
Right. And it's also a good sign of muscular imbalances too, if they're doing the lunge improperly. And those muscular imbalances can turn up in everyday life things that might be causing them trouble or pain, like stepping stairs, squatting and getting down up off the ground, stuff like that that'll really impact their quality of life.
Yeah, so not just with lunges, and then we start moving up into the upper body. So you mentioned core, so we'll go ahead and pass through that a little bit, but then finding out a little bit more about their shoulders. What their shoulders look like, how well the range of motion is in their shoulders, can they put the arm up over their head and actually get it straight in the, like kind of stack your hand over shoulder, over hips, over knees, over ankles. There's a lot of people who don't realize it, but because they've spent a life of sitting with their shoulders hunched over, that they may not understand that that's not the appropriate way. You should be able to raise your arm up next to your ear.
Yeah, we see a lot of upper body problems, especially with today's society, being hunched over the computer all day. Just postural issues that involve some stretching to get rid of, and then some strengthening as well of opposing muscle groups.
And then also going back, not just in movement history, but we also have to find out a little bit about your health history. Are there issues that are going to arise when we get your heart rate up? What is, do you have history of asthma? Did you have neck issues also still going on with that? Having other chronic issues that may cause trouble during a 35 or 45 minute bout of exercise. Blood pressure tends to be one, so you have to kind of manage that. So is there a history of blood pressure in your family? What does that stem from? Is there a history of obesity in your family? What does that stem from? Is there a history of athleticism in your family? What does that stem from? Like, there's a lot of different things we're going to take into account when choosing the exercises for your particular program. And one of the reasons we like to have that is because we feel that an exercise program should be somewhat cohesive. Yes, you can get in better shape and you can improve your fitness if you're starting at a generally athletic base and improve your fitness just by putting out random days of exercise. But if you're not doing exercises correctly, or if you're doing repeated motions over and over again at an inappropriate intensity, that might also cause a problem.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially in the day of the internet, are looking online for solutions, and there are a lot out there, but the thing is having it tailored specifically to you and your needs. Not everybody is going to have a lower back issue but can lunge, and just all these different measurements that we're taking in the assessment, all of them add up to an exact profile for you.
Yeah, and so once we get that profile figured out, we start out with repetition of exercises. We build a big base. It's kind of cool when we're selecting programming exercises for programs. You start out with a big base and you bring it down to a narrow field to where you finally get the actual program. And that program is going to go a little bit over time, and then you'll reassess, because over time you're going to get stronger, you'll get more mobile, there'll be a lot of things you can do, you'll find out new things that you might not be able to do. But in the long run, every exercise situation is going to, or every exercise program, every exercise day that you partake in is going to be an assessment for the next program.
And everything you do should have a purpose as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So then other things include your stress of the day. Do you have a high stress job? Do you have a low stress job? Are you sitting all day? Are you typing all day? If someone's sitting all day, we may not want to take them through an exercise regimen that's going to have them sitting on the bench all day. They may need to be up and they may need to be moving. But we are going to start, we're going to give an example of what it might look like if we are programming someone for weight loss, because weight loss seems to be one of the most popular topics. And then right now, a lot of people are at home, so you might be able to take some of this information and put it together and come up with your own home program that will allow you to be as successful as you possibly can during this time where you may not have a gym. That's another thing I want to take into account, what actual exercise equipment you may have access to. Because you may not have access to a full gym, but you may have access to a set of stairs, or you may have access to dumbbells only. There's a lot of things that can be done with simple tools by themselves.
Just working with what you got.
Yep. So one of the things we're actually going to do, since we're going to take our primary example is going to be weight loss, and then we'll move into we'll sprinkle some information on runners and weightlifters kind of separately. But
Yep.
weight loss, what's one of the first things once you've gone through that you're looking at doing when you're doing a weightlift or a weight loss program?
First thing I do is start with developing a good foundation. So looking at the core strength, like I said earlier, making sure they know how to activate their core, and then using that in unilateral movements. So stuff only using one side of the body so that they're using their core actively as they're doing their exercises. Another thing I'll do is intermingle upper body with lower body reps and exercises just to get that peripheral heart action going. Basically increasing your blood flow and helping get your heart rate up.
Good deal. So one of the things I like to do, especially if we're going into weight loss, I like to look at what the calorie expenditure is going to look like, and not just over the course of that 30-minute to 45-minute time period you're actually doing the exercises, but the course of the day. And one of the ways I found out that we can do that pretty well is I like to sprinkle a good amount of weights. Now, appropriate weights, not weights to get heavy. Yes, you will get stronger over the long term, but finding out where resistance training can fit into your programming, because building a good foundation, a good, strong muscular foundation over the course of the day can help one to cut out their, or to maximize the amount of calories they can burn over the course of that day. And at the end of the day, for weight loss, you are looking at calories in versus calories out.
Yep.
As simple as that sounds, it's not always that easy though.
Right.
So when building a weight loss program, I like to start by looking at what resistance exercises we can do safely and efficiently that will allow us to build the most, or make the most impact on musculature.
Yep.
And then on top of that, adding some cardio stuff in there that will get that heart rate up. Now, when you're building that program, you kind of want to be aware of the intensity of your resistance training versus the intensity of your cardio training.
Right.
So give me an example of let's say we have, we'll take someone who's about 35 to 38 years old, and we'll call it female, and they may have a little bit of obesity in their family. Let's start there. What are some exercises that you may do that? As far as joints go, they're pretty much healthy.
Yeah. So for upper body, depending on how they squat, I would try to get them in a squat progression. So if they can't squat too well, teaching them how to squat using box squats, stuff like that of that nature, getting them in the right movement patterns. High repetitions just to keep that heart rate up, like we said. We don't want to overload if they can't already do the movement. Doing a movement wrong with lots of weight leads to some bad results.
Right.
So we don't want that. As far as upper body goes, like I said, some unilateral movements. So lying on the floor, chest press one arm at a time. Eventually progressing them to a yoga ball, doing the same thing just to test their balance and increase their core development as well.
Good, that makes sense. And I'm a big fan of the bar, obviously. So there's different progressions in which you can kind of bring the bar in. We'll start with a pipe, and then we have a small bar that weighs about 15 pounds. And then from there, you work your way up on the 15-pound bar, 35-pound bar, and a 45-pound bar. And then working your way up through that. Now, not everybody needs a bar, so then we can use dumbbells. So as we go through exercise selection, sometimes it's not just the exercise itself, like a squat, but how many different ways can we squat that have a different stimulus on the body?
Right. It's really breaking down that movement.
Yep. So you mentioned the squat, and we'll go back to that because that's going to be a pretty popular exercise. If someone can't necessarily squat, and he mentioned going to a box squat, and then once they get to that box squat and they're able to box squat, as we said before, that everybody who's doing an exercise program should plan for progress, right? So if you're going to do the same thing over and over again, your body will adapt, and you will get some results in the beginning, but then you're going to want to continue to challenge yourself as you continue through the exercise program. So like with a box squat, what's the next progression of a box squat? You can probably go to a goblet squat, where you add a little bit of weight at the center mass of the body, and then you work on taking your hips. The cool thing about the goblet squat is that the weight starts in the middle, and so the difference between a goblet squat and a back squat is that it helps you to stay balanced in the front, so you can have a more upright torso.
Yeah, it's kind of balancing out the weight that you're pushing back.
Absolutely. And then from there, as he mentioned earlier, doing single arm work or single sided work on the upper body, one of the things that I like to do is a single arm chest press from the floor. One, because it does start with a little bit more stability, and then once you start to see if they can activate their core without rotating, then you can kind of work yourself up to maybe a balance ball, or then putting them on the bench and putting 2 dumbbells in their hand. So the other thing is, depending upon your time frame and how much time you have, that's another thing to take into account when building your strength program or even your exercise program. You may not have 45 minutes 6 days a week, so you might need to get the biggest punch you can in a 45-minute period for 3 days a week. And so we might look at that and say, okay, if we got 3 days a week, what's another way that we can attack for this person? So let's start there, Zach, and go from there. Give me an example of what you might do for a 3-day-a-week program that may be 30 to 45 minutes.
First, I would see if there's any way on their off days that they can incorporate some sort of cardio, whether that be walking or something that doesn't necessarily require them getting to a gym.
Okay, that makes sense. I get it.
And then I would just make sure that I was most efficient with the time that they did have in those 3 days in the gym. So probably 3 different full body days, focusing on getting the heart rate up and intermingling, like I said before, those lower body and upper body exercises.
Yeah. And to that, if you have 3 different total body days, another thing that you may want to do with that is vary up the way you attack each muscle group. Yep. So a total body day might include dumbbell total body, another day might include ropes and kettlebells, and then another day might include body weight exercises.
Right.
One of the ways I like to split it up is I might do an upper body day, a lower body day, and then a total body day. Also, again, depending on what their time frame is like and what their goals are. And then, as he said before, I'm a big fan of having people do cardio in between their programs and their exercise bouts. So let's say we did it let's say our day happened to be Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday. On a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, we might not be able to spread everything out across the board, so we might have to do Monday upper body, Tuesday lower body, Thursday total body, or a core and cardio type session that still primarily hits the whole body.
Right. Yep. And I think another way to tackle it too is looking at other variables. So
Right.
like the direction of your movement, a squat is just going to go straight up and down, whereas a leg extension that's also targeting quads is going to go like this. So it's a little bit different in targeting.
And so with those other days going through, like he said, if you're doing the 3 total body workouts, you may end up trying to find some exercises that have you moving side to side, so everything's not straight up and down in that plane of movement. We're not going to get too much into the planes, but just understand that going forward and backwards and up and down are only 2 ways the body can move. So when you're doing exercises, try to do some variations of the exercises in which you can change direction, where you're moving left and right, or at a diagonal, where the body has to or there's a different direction for the stimulus, and that's going to matter in the long run because the body doesn't take everything from a straight forward and back and up and down movement.
Yeah, just to mirror that, everyday life isn't going to have you just going straight up and side to side. So it's good to be versatile in every plane of motion.
Absolutely. So as we continue with that, so we've got weight loss. We said we're going to start with building a foundation, trying to build some strength first, and then adding some cardio on there. Now, sometimes the question will come up, well, what if I do a lot more cardio and a little less weights? Again, it's going to matter. It's going to depend on each person. So yes, you may require a little bit more cardio and a lot less strength training, or a little less strength training, but we all recognize that there needs to be some cardio involved and there needs to be some muscle tone gained. Because without muscle tone, the body's not going to be as efficient in improving, or it's not going to be as efficient in burning calories at rest, right? You can increase your metabolic rate, and your metabolic rate is the amount of calories you burn when you're doing absolutely nothing. You can increase your metabolic rate by increasing the amount of lean muscle tissue you have on your body. And we all know that comes through strength training. Yep. And then you can do cardio on top of that to help with that extra calorie burn over the long run.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, with runners, if their goal is to be as fast as they can over the course of a certain distance, we're going to have to maximize the exercises that get them where they want to be and minimize the exercises that aren't necessary. So a lot of times when people start to do things, they want to throw everything in there. They want to run, they want to lift weights, they want to do kettlebells, they want to do yoga. But at some point in time, you have to recognize that all those aren't going to fit into a program to help you get to the end of your goal. You may have to cycle through different forms of each of those exercises at different stages as your body progresses and as you learn to move through each one of those. So let's say a runner, Zach, you were training for a marathon.
Yep.
And we also talked about you training for a marathon and then going through a squat program and a deadlift program and feeling the differences and how that affected your training. So tell us a little bit about what it was like going through Squattober first, and then trying to train for your marathon, and how you felt that was okay. And then we'll talk about the intensity through that process.
Yeah, I think the best analogy for how the body reacts to that is kind of like a car. So a car, you can go 300 miles and you can just bolt out of the gate, and that's going to expend a lot of gas really quickly. So
Right.
think about bolting out of the gate like intensity. So you can only go really intense for so long before you're out of gas, before your body starts to break down. So doing multiple different high intensity exercises eventually wears down the body if you're not putting in the proper rest times in between. So just coming up with that balance, like you were talking about, and like we were talking about earlier, of the cardio versus the weight training, and getting that good balance in there is going to be super important when you're training for something like that. Or maybe giving up a little bit of one for a little bit of time to improve and focus on this one over here, and then cycling back.
Yep. So tell us about that time you did dead summer trying to train for a marathon.
Yeah, so I did, a good analogy would be, again, going back to the car, Squattober. It was super low intensity for my cardio. I was just getting in mileage, so it wasn't a whole lot of track workouts. I was going nice and slow, and I was doing high intensity with my squat work, and everything went fine. Fast forward about 2 months, I did Deadcember, which is a deadlift program, while also throwing in some track workouts to improve my speed and pace on my marathon time. And it didn't go so well. My body started to break down, got some injuries, so learned my lesson there the hard way.
Yep. So in that, when training hard for a race, you want to minimize, you're going to need to make sure you're doing some strength training of some sort, but that's one of the things we'll take into account. So doing a strength training load that's conducive for someone that's trying to build muscle and improve either a 1 rep max or an explosive lift is not going to be as beneficial for someone who's trying to run a marathon or a half marathon, or even a 10K for that matter. So you may want to pull that back a little bit, lower the intensity of the weights, and then focus on getting that heart rate up and improving the body's ability to use oxygen.
Right.
And on the contrary, for lifting weights, trying to run 3 to 4 miles a day while trying to improve your 1 rep max isn't necessarily going to be the most efficient way to improve your 1 rep max. Not that you can't do it, but the rate and the efficiency at which that's going to happen is going to slow down, because now you're talking about one energy system affecting the other when you're training. So if you're training for 3 miles, when you go in to do a 1 rep max squat, your body has it completely recovered and the ability to put out that much power. You'll have to train yourself in that, but you're still going to have to slow it down and take appropriate rest periods between your cardio and your strength. Janet, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. So the break time between lifting and trying to run a race, or not necessarily the break time, but the intensity of lifting is going to increase and the amount of cardio is going to decrease. So instead of doing cardio maybe 3 to 4 times a week while lifting weights, you are trying to improve your 1 rep max, you may break it down to 2 and put those on a decent distance away with a decent rest period in between you lifting at max volume. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, good stuff. So as we continue, we're going to kind of close on that. So what we've done so far, we talked about exercise prescription. We've taken you through the idea of the assessment, why we have an assessment that allows us to learn more about you guys before we actually write the program. Then we take some of your goals, put that in there, and then we choose what exercise is based on that. And there's a lot of exercises. So the cool thing is, depending upon where you are, where your athleticism is, we can choose one of infinity amount of exercises to help benefit you. You got anything to finish off with that?
Yeah, I think it's just going back to the importance of strength training. Obviously, we talked about a little bit about the importance for runners and developing that, but specifically for weight loss people, a lot of weight loss people have already tried like cardio programs as they come in, and think that cardio is really all you need, but looking at the strength benefits and the benefits of adding muscle and changing your body composition, not just losing the fat, but also adding that muscle.
Oh yeah, that's super important at the end of the day.
Yep.
Good stuff. So with that, just to kind of piggyback off what he said, increasing your muscle tone is going to help with your entire calorie burn over the course of time. But we really appreciate you guys watching, We're going to conclude with that. We are going to be here every Wednesday around lunchtime, sometime between 12 o'clock and 12:15 to give you guys some information. If there's anything you guys would like to hear, you can either hit us up on Instagram, you can DM us, you can comment below this video, or you can email us at service.bodyshopx@gmail.com. We really appreciate you guys coming out to listen, and hope you guys have a wonderful day.
See y'all.